This is the His and Her Money Show, where we talk about managing money, marriage, and everything in between. Now, here are your hosts, America's #1 money couple, Talent and Ty McNeely.
This episode of the His and Her Money Show is being brought to you by Audible. Audible is your go-to resource for all of your audiobook needs. A lot of you have a desire to read because, as you have heard from us, the average millionaire reads 2 to 3 books per month. But you don't have time to sit down with a physical book. Well, that's where Audible comes in handy because they have thousands of audiobooks that you can listen to on your commute while you're at the gym or on the go in general. And therefore, you can get that reading done that you've been desiring to do. And guess what? Because you are listeners of the His and Her Money Show, Audible is going to give you a free audiobook, yours to keep. To find out more details and to get your audiobook for free, go to hisandhermoney.com/audible. Again, that's hisandhermoney.com/audible. Hey family, welcome back to another edition of the His and Her Money Show with America's #1 money couple, Talent and Ty McNeely. Super excited to have you with us on this episode. I really think you guys are going to get a great deal of value out of this particular episode. We are blessed and privileged to have Touré Roberts as our special guest on this episode. And he's going to be talking about the topic of wholeness and becoming whole. For a lot of us, we are on a journey of many different fashions. But at the core of that journey, no matter what that journey is, whether that's a journey to improve your marriage, to improve your finances, or just to improve your life in general, there is the issue of you personally being whole enough to handle the journey that you're on. And that's why we invited Touré Roberts on to help us with this topic, to help us all become whole. So let's get Touré on so he can share some of his wisdom and knowledge on this topic. Hey, Pastor Touré, welcome to the His and Her Money Show.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Good to be here.
We're super glad to have you. You are an amazing person, pastor, entrepreneur who has helped a ton of people over the years. So we were super excited that you were able to make some time to come on the show and share some wisdom with our audience today. But if there's some people listening who are unfamiliar with who you are, can you just take a moment and introduce yourself to everybody and let them know what you're all about?
Certainly. Well, I'm just a small-time pastor from Los Angeles, California. No, I planted a church called, originally it was called One LA in California. And the church grew largely amongst young millennials and more specifically in Hollywood. The church began to grow to several thousand members. And then I actually met the love of my life in 2014. Her name is Sarah. And we've been pastoring the church since. The church has since gone through a name change and somewhat of an alignment change. It's called the Potter's House at 1 LA now. Sarah's a daughter of Bishop T.D. Jakes, who has become not only an incredible father-in-law, but a friend and a mentor. And it was just the right thing to do to bring those two streams together. And so we pastor now the Potter's House at 1 LA. And then also we have recently taken over the leadership of the Potter's House Denver. So we live both in LA and Denver. So we are enjoying both climates. We've got the cold and the mountains in Colorado, and we've got the beach in LA. But our message is simple. It's about authenticity. It's about wholeness, and it's about making faith relevant to those who perhaps may have thought that it was not.
So how did you get your start in ministry? Because from what I understand, that this was not your first choice as far as a vocation that you were planning for yourself. So how did this come about?
Yeah, well, I never would have thought that I would be pastoring. I think I had a healthy reverence for God and the church, but my background is business and marketing. I'm an entrepreneur, and that's the route I was going. It was to rise to the top of the corporate ladder. And in 2000, my life was doing well and succeeding and thriving in every way except inwardly. And it caused me to question what life was about, what I was truly doing. I wasn't, walking a walk of faith. And I started going to this church, a great man of God by the name of Bishop Kenneth Omer here in Los Angeles. And I started sitting in his congregation, and because I can hide, it was big, I can hide in there. And it was like every message was talking to me. And over the course of about 7 months, I made the decision to really, give God my life. And I didn't realize that giving God your life meant that he could do whatever he wanted to do with your life. And so for me, it ultimately was ministry, which began as really an organic overflow of some of the powerful things that were happening in my life personally.
Awesome. Now you are about to release your second book, and it's called Wholeness, Winning Life from the Inside Out. I would love to know why this topic. What made you go this route with your second book?
Well, you're right. As you mentioned, it's my second book. The first one was called Purpose Awakening, Discover the Epic Idea That Motivated Your Birth, which was all about finding purpose. But what I realized as I continued to counsel people and continue to go through my own journey of wholeness, towards wholeness, I realized that a lot of people can discover purpose, but if they don't deal with some of the inner limitations, some of the monsters that hide in your blind spots, then discovering purpose is one thing, but you won't be able to actualize it. There are things that are self-sabotaging that we can't even recognize. It's almost unfair. It's like somebody fighting you and you can't even see where the punches are coming from. And so I wrote Wholeness because based on my experience pastoring and my own personal experience and the things that I've learned, I realized that this was a topic that is not talked about enough, or if it is, it's most people don't know what wholeness is or what it means. It means different things to different people. So I really felt like, this is a new year, a new season. Everyone wants to be better. I wanted to write something that spoke to not just outer success, but more importantly, inner success.
Now, you just said it yourself. The word wholeness can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. What does wholeness mean to you, and what are you trying to teach us through this book, and why is wholeness something that we all should be pursuing?
Absolutely. I think that wholeness, to define it, and I define it a lot of different ways in the book, but in simplest terms, it's to be unbroken. It's to be complete. It's to be not lacking anything. It's to be the healthiest version of a person. We all, life doesn't spare its rod on anyone. We all get broken in certain ways. And sometimes that brokenness happens very early in life. And so wholeness is about identifying those things that keep us from being whole. Because I believe as a man of faith that God not only wants us to get to heaven, he wants us to have wholeness here on earth, to break sometimes some generational things, some things that are environmentally induced upon a person. And I think it is highly valuable. The cosmetic industry is a $13 billion industry. So people are spending so much money on the outside, and so they're looking pretty, but going home and they're miserable. More people are depressed today because of social media. They're grading their real life on somebody else's highlight reels. And so I really wanted to take a topic that doesn't promise, $1 million homes and fancy cars necessarily, but it does promise the best version of yourself. And usually I've discovered if your insides are wealthy, your outsides will be as well.
I think you just touched on something that a lot of us may not even be aware of, and that's the effect that social media can have on us feeling whole or us feeling broken. Any advice on how to navigate that in this information age that we're in?
Absolutely. I use social media every single day, but I don't go to social media to get anything. I go to social media to give. I understand that it is a powerful tool to touch people, to change lives. If you're a business person, you certainly have to be on it or you are considered non-existent. However, I am careful not to spend too much time salivating over or meditating over somebody else's life, because for one, the reality of it is and I'm guilty of this as well, before anyone sees a picture of mine on social media, I have probably taken 75 pictures before then, which means that a more accurate version of me was the picture you didn't see. And, I'm only showing you what I want to see. And so to recognize that it's one dimensional. And sometimes when you can't see the multi-dimensional aspect of life, it can be deceiving and sometimes even depressing because, again, you're saying, why don't I have this? Why don't I have that? Because of what is being shown on social media. And sometimes the person is showing you something that they don't have. And so I think that you need to handle it wisely. Know who you are. Don't go to social media to get. Go to social media to get.
I think it's probably really easy for us to look at you today, your life. You have a beautiful family, church work you're doing, entrepreneurial work you're doing, and to think that you've always had it all together. But was there a time where you were not whole, where you found yourself a bit broken? And if so, how did you come out of it? Because there might be some people that are in the broken place in their life right now, and they just don't know what the next move for them is.
Absolutely. I think that one of the most challenging times in my life that I've experienced in 2013. And I went through a divorce after 17 years as a pastor, as a man of God. And I couldn't understand how that could happen to me. God, I'm walking with you. I'm serving you. I gave this thing all I had for 17 years. I fought for it. I believe in marriage. How can this happen to me? And really went through a time of depression. I would be, in my apartment at the time that it had ceiling to floor windows with a beautiful view. And I'd have the curtains closed, depressed during the day, and would muster up just enough strength to go and preach my midweek service at night. And so what happened was, in the midst of that dark time, in the midst of my brokenness, God was speaking, and he was saying, hang in there. This is painful, but I'm up to something, and I would take refuge and solace in passages like God causes all things to work together for good. So I had little winks that said, you're broken now. You're in a tough spot. You don't understand it. And you're working through all of your pain, but you're going to come out of this thing. And, in hindsight, I believed it, but I didn't know it. And I wish that I would have had a me on the other side to go back to that broken Touré, 4.5 years ago and tell him. So I would say, to stay focused on the light. Even in the darkest moment, God will always make certain that there is a lifeline or some inspiration of light. Darkness might be all around, but he'll make certain that there's one little piece of light to hold on to. It could be a friend. It could be church. It could be a message. Hold on to that and make that light your reality until that light consumes the darkness you were once in.
My wife, Ty, and I, we counsel and coach a lot of people. Even on the financial side, we have found that sometimes people are broken and don't realize it because they've been through certain experiences in life and have built up this kind of shield to protect themselves. And they've come accustomed to walking around with this brokenness. How can someone take inventory, real good inventory of exactly how close or how far away they are from being whole?
Yeah, and I agree with you. I mean, I spent the first section of Wholeness, the first 3 chapters on things we tell ourselves to keep us from wholeness. And the first chapter is, I thought I was whole already, and so it is a commitment to being self-aware. We're in an information age. We are knowledgeable about so many things. At the click of a button, we can find out about what's happening in the hills of the Philippines right now, in the earlobe of a monkey, at the click of a button. So we are well knowledge. We're extremely knowledgeable about what's going on outside of us, but are completely ignorant about what's going on the inside of us. And so I believe that some of the steps is to begin to have honest conversations with yourself. For example, if you are feeling insecure, I've got a whole chapter in the book on insecurity. If you're feeling insecure, don't just accept that feeling. Stop, pause. What's going on? Because insecurity is evidence that there is some sort of negative thought about yourself that you have embraced. It's not, and you have a choice. You can say, wow, I've got this feeling. And you can either allow that feeling to cause you to shrink, not believe in yourself, to fail at a job interview or an audition, or to go into the big meeting. You were full of confidence, and all of a sudden, this spirit of insecurity hits you and you blow the business deal because insecurity is an energy that people can sniff and smell, and no one wants to invest in your business or what have you. And so it is to be
self-aware enough to make the habit of being self-aware enough that you begin to start asking, what's going on inside of me? Okay, that didn't feel right. What was that? What is the thought connected to that? And I know that if it makes me feel bad, that thought didn't come from God. That's an anti-me thought. And so let me now take that thought, dissect it, and uproot that thought, and then replace that thought with the thought of truth, with the thought of affirmation, with the thought of the things that we know God says, speaks to us. And so, I talk about it extensively in the book, but I think the main thing is to be self-aware.
And I went through a lot of your teachings and read and watched a lot of your sermons. And I know one of the key components to being whole, according to your teaching, is the types of relationships that you keep, as well as the type of relationships that you discard. Can you kind of elaborate on that a little bit and how we should be more thoughtful with our relationships?
Love reading, but wish you had more time to get into your favorite books? What if you could use the time you already have and listen to the books you already love? Well, now you can with Audible. With Audible books, you can be inspired, entertained, and educated anywhere, anytime. Choose from the bestsellers in self-development, business, nonfiction, and more. So what are you waiting for? Your first 30 days are free. Visit hisandhermoney.com/audible to get started today. That's hisandhermoney.com/audible.
Certainly. Well, relationships will make you or break you. I believe that you attract on your level. And so in other words, if you are broken, you are probably going to be drawn to another broken person. It's codependency. And as it relates to romantic relationships, codependency does a masterful job masquerading as love. You'll think it's love because you feel connected and drawn and you guys are really into each other. But oftentimes you are meeting each other's mutual neediness. And so I believe that relationships are a reflection of yourself. And I think that they have to be managed well. I think that they have to be qualified. Why are we connected? In my congregation, I sometimes talk about not making bonds with people over mutual offenses. And so sometimes, in some environments, maybe it's a work environment or a church environment, the only reason why the two of you are friends is because of who you mutually hate. Well, that's a terrible way to enter into a relationship. So the relationship, qualifying every relationship, what is this based on? Am I trying to get something from this person? Is this person meeting a need that only God and wholeness, can meet? And so I think that every relationship has to be qualified. One of the things I talk about in the book is that any relationship that does not evolve will dissolve. Some relationships can't grow with you, and you have to have what I call the gift of goodbye. When it is time to end the relationship, it doesn't even mean that there's something wrong with the other person. Sometimes it's not about what's wrong with you or what's wrong with the other person. The issue is the relationship. And so I like goodbye. What's awesome about goodbye is that the first word in that phrase is good. Letting people go is a good thing. Letting the right or the wrong people go, and I should say wrong people, letting people go in the wrong relationship is really a good thing. And you have to embrace that and be willing to pay the price of maybe being sad for a moment, as opposed to allowing a relationship to exist in your life that is keeping you from your progress.
Wow. Great insight there. Now let's talk about, because I think one of the things that is going to be important for all of us to get to the place of wholeness is prayer. I'm wondering, what role do you teach prayer plays as it relates to us becoming whole?
Prayer is everything. It is the one of the few spiritual disciplines that requires faith, requires believing in God, requires two-way communication. And a lot of people think that prayer is you talking to God. Nah, the most powerful prayer is you positioning yourself so that God can talk to you. It's two-way communication. And one of the things that I love about prayer as it relates to wholeness is that in that communication with God, God's going to show you things about yourself if you ask him, He's going to show you things about yourself that you couldn't see within yourself. King David in the Bible said, search me, O Lord, examine me, test my mind, test my heart. If you find any way in me, take it from me, remove it from me. This was an acknowledgement, that he likely had some brokenness in his blind spot that he could not see. And through prayer and through worship, he invited God to search him. And so I think that prayer is a significant component to wholeness. God, show me what I cannot see.
I think a lot of times when it comes to, because you're challenging us to look at ourselves. You're challenging us to do what we need to do to get ourselves into a better place. And sometimes when we are being encouraged to make internal changes, we look at all the external things that's going on in our life and we're too busy. You personally, you pastor 2 churches in 2 cities, you're a husband, you're a father, 6 kids, you're an entrepreneur. How do you personally, what type of strategies are you using to not lose this wholeness in the midst of all these responsibilities that are on your plate?
Phenomenal question. Well, this is going to sound ungodly, but I'm selfish. I'm selfish. Now, here's what I mean by that. When Jesus was asked what the greatest commandment was, he said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your mind, all your soul, all your strength. And then he says, love your neighbor as you love yourself. So the sequence there, it would almost seem like the sequence is loving God, loving your neighbor, and loving yourself. But that is not the sequence. The sequence is loving God, loving yourself, and you love your neighbor in the way that you love yourself. So for me, I believe in being spiritually and emotionally healthy at all times. And I set a high priority on that. I'll tell you right now, if I'm not good, if my marriage isn't good, I'll shut this whole thing down. I'll bring in guest speakers to both campuses because at the end of the day, my priorities are my personal wholeness, the wholeness of my wife and I and our marriage, and the wholeness of our kids. And so for me, I prioritize. You're right. There is a lot going on. But my wife and I have made a decision. We've made a covenant. And if we got to sell everything, get in a 1-bedroom apartment with all of our kids, but we are whole and happy, so be it. The devil is a liar. And so we have things, we get a lot of invitations to speak and do things. And we have some criteria that we put it through. It's not all about the opportunity or perhaps the financial upside of the opportunity or the exposure. Our first question is, how are we doing? Do we need time together? Are our kids missing us more? We don't even get to the finances and all that kind of stuff to the last point of our qualification process. We have 4 points to it. The needs of our marriage, the needs of our family, is there a financial upside? Is this because sometimes we do things that will cost us money because we feel called to it. But we look at the financial upside, and then what are our current thrusts? We're very goal-oriented, focus-oriented. Is this in alignment with the thrust? But those things come last. It's about not losing myself, not losing our marriage, not losing our connection with our kids. That takes priority. So I think to answer your question, it's about prioritization. And I think that for individuals, you got to prioritize yourself and your own personal wholeness first.
You've taught thousands and thousands of people. You've counseled thousands and thousands of people. What do you think is the biggest difference between those who successfully pursue and obtain wholeness and those who don't?
I think that they have to see the value in it. The second chapter of the book in the section that says things we tell ourselves that keep us from wholeness is it's not a big deal. So some people really, they'll say that they want to be whole and they'll say, that they want to be healthy and spiritually prosperous, but they won't prioritize it, and I think that that's it. I think that the people who are going to really succeed and do well in life and have the opportunity to pass down that spiritual wholeness to their children, sometimes breaking generational curses, establishing a legacy of wholeness, are those who take it seriously and acknowledge, hey, you know what? Things might be going well, but they may not be. Or maybe they're going well, but they're not the best that they can be because of these things, these self-sabotagers that I can't see. And so the difference between the two is those who really take it seriously, those who really believe it's a big deal, and those who don't.
If there's someone listening to you right now who is currently right now in a dark or broken place in their life, what words of encouragement would you give to that person if you could talk to them one-on-one?
Absolutely. I would say God knows exactly where you are. There's a story of a gentleman in the Bible named Job. And there's one thing that he says he went through. I mean, the unthinkable. I wouldn't wish what he went through on anyone. He was in an extremely dark place. But he says something. He says, "For God knows the way that I take, and when he tries me, I shall come forth as gold." He was basically saying that God knew exactly where he was. He might be in darkness to his situation, but his situation was full of light. God knew exactly where he was. And I would say that person, if you're in a dark place like that, you might be like Job. And I know it's hard. I'm not being insensitive to the reality of your pain. Life gets rough. I've been there. I understand that. But don't forget that God knows where you are, and God would not have allowed that darkness to come to you if he did not pre-qualify you to endure it. Hang in there. Keep trusting. There's a saying, when you can't see God's hand, you got to trust his heart, and his heart for you is that he loves you. He's got a plan for you, and this thing will come to pass.
Pastor Touré, do me a favor and let everybody know how to pick up a copy of your brand new book, and tell us more about what we'll find once we get our copy.
Absolutely. Well, you can start. This is cool. We've got a website called areyouwhole.com. Are you whole? Like the question, areyouwhole.com. You can go there, and of course you can purchase the book there, but you can also take the wholeness test. It's amazing. It's an 18-question test, and it is a very introspective look. And you'll be interested to see the results. Your wholeness is graded by a percentage. So you can go to areyouwhole.com. You get information on the book. Take the test. It will bless you and start you on your journey.
Pastor Touré, this has been amazing. We are super thankful that you took time to speak into our lives on today. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to make this happen.
Oh, you're welcome. I enjoyed the conversation, and thank you for having me.
There it is, the insight and wisdom that you need on your journey to becoming whole. So much wisdom was unpacked by Touré Roberts, and I highly suggest you pick up his new book, Wholeness. It was a fantastic read, and I can personally recommend it to each and every one of you. If you were able to take in what he was saying, and you see that this is an area that you really need to do a deep dive into in crafting yourself to be all that God has created you to be, definitely pick up Touré Roberts' new book, Wholeness. And we put a link to that particular book in the show notes of this episode to make it easy for you guys. So just go to hisandhermoney.com/podcast, and you can click the link underneath Touré Roberts' episode, and you will be able to pick up a copy of this brand new book. We want you guys to be whole, not just in your finances, not just in your marriage and your relationships, but within yourself. Our desire for you is to be all that you are supposed to be and to fulfill the destiny and the purpose that you were sent here to fulfill. Well, that does it for this episode of the His and Her Money Show. Don't forget that you can always keep in touch with us at our website, hisandhermoney.com. Here it is. No matter where you are on the road to financial freedom, the key is to start now and finish strong.
Thanks for tuning in to the His and Her Money Show. For more information on how to win with your finances, be sure to visit www.hisandhermoney.com.